All right, here we go. Welcome into the Stone Shield Show. We are here. It is Ash Wednesday. Happy Ash Wednesday to everybody out there. Wednesday, February 18th, back at our usual time here at 11 o'clock in the morning. Appreciate everybody making us a part of your day. Lots of stuff that we need to discuss today, believe it or not. Kind of a down period here in the middle of February, but we do have a lot of content that we got to get through. Cincinnati Bengals making a move yesterday. Jalen Davis is going to be back on the team next year. I certainly think that is a positive sign. Does that mean they can now neglect that position in free agency in the NFL draft? Absolutely not. But when we did our breakdown right when the offseason began, we said that there was probably a good chance Jalen Davis would be back with this team, and that would be the right move for the Cincinnati Bengals. And he's not going to test out free agency. He wants to stay here in Cincinnati. He's been here for a long time, and I think that very much is a valuable re-addition to the Cincinnati team for next season. So we'll talk about that. Also, BengalsTalk.com put together 3 make-or-break players for this upcoming year in the Cincinnati Bengals. Got a couple of takeaways there. We'll talk about those 3 players and what the expectations are for them this coming season. Also, Patrick Mahomes, for the 4th consecutive year, has restructured his contract with the Kansas City Chiefs, and that is something, as we talk about these Bengals offseason topics, tagging and trading Trey Hendrickson, right? I think good franchises would make that move, try to turn it into an asset in 2026. While I also think good franchises would make the move and restructure Joe Burrow's contract, open up, close to $20 million against the cap. Bengals already have $54-ish million to work with, but opening up more money, allowing you to be more aggressive, add another player or two or a high-end player. If you restructure that deal, convert it into a signing bonus for Joe Burrow. Kansas City, winning organization. They win Super Bowls left and right. They've been doing it each and every year. Just continue to push that down the line for Patrick Mahomes, and the cap's going to continue to go up. Joe Burrow has said that he would be willing to do it in the past. Could that be something we see in the coming days and weeks for the Cincinnati Bengals? We'll talk about that. I think it'd be a good decision for the Bengals to take a page out of Kansas City's book when it comes to restructuring the contract of their superstar quarterback. Also, the Miami RedHawks, they stay undefeated. They beat UMass 86-77 last night, improved to 26-0, and despite the fact that they led for all but 47 seconds of that ball game, it was kind of another nail-biter for the Miami RedHawks. UMass was seemingly within striking distance for much of the game, and the RedHawks closed it down. Unbelievable performance late. Multiple guys in double figures. Peter Suter, friend of the show, doing his thing. 20-plus again last night. Luke Skajak facilitating the rock, scoring the rock there as well. And they just keep going here as they only got a couple of more games left before the MAC tournament. Joe Lunardi has come out and said that if they run the table here, they can still stub their toe and get in. We'll see if that proves true or not. Still got a lot of people bent out of shape about the RedHawks and their schedule. I understand they don't play in the SEC. I understand they don't play in the Big Ten. So do they as well. We're not sitting here saying they should be ranked number 7 in the country. We're just saying they should be able to stub their toe and still get into the tournament. Hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully they run the table and run it all the way through the big dance. We'll see. But we'll talk Miami RedHawks basketball a little bit on the show as well. And a little bit of golf content to round out this hour on a Wednesday. Anthony Kim. I'm not a Live Tour guy. I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be a Live Tour guy. However, his story, how things have turned for him is pretty remarkable, what he was able to do this past weekend. We'll talk about that. We'll talk a little Scotty Scheffler as well. As, a couple of years ago, you heard the Tiger comparisons. And I think a lot of people were like, I don't pump the brakes here. That's a little, over the top to be comparing him to Tiger Woods, the one and only Tiger Woods. It's really not over the top anymore. What he was able to do at Pebble, despite the fact he did not end up hoisting the trophy. Morikawa won last week, but 63 in the final round, where after Thursday and Friday, you're like, hey, you know what? Kind of feels like this is one of those tournaments for Scotty where he just doesn't have it. Like, finally, he has a tournament where he's not a threat to finish in the top 20 or the top 10, and he found a way to be tied for the lead late on Sunday. So we'll talk Scotty, talk Morikawa, talk Anthony Kim. Riv, by the way, gets underway tomorrow. Signature event, loaded field. Rory will be playing. Scotty will be playing. Xander, Justin Rose, Goddard. Bunch of studs will be playing in that this week. Tiger came out and spoke yesterday. I think anytime Tiger speaks, he's making headlines, obviously. And PGA Tour needs to find a way to put him in, I think, a bigger role. Because when he talks, people listen. And clearly he knows how to carry himself, says the right things, and anytime he's in front of a microphone, it's kind of must-see TV, to be completely honest with you. So we'll talk about that a little bit to round out today's show. Cincinnati Reds continue to practice away down in Goodyear, Arizona. Spring training, games coming up. Charlie Goldsmith down there working his butt off, putting out multiple stories each and every day. Hunter Green made some comments to our friend Jeremy Rao, Fox 19. Was going to talk about him, but I'm going to put that on the back burner for a little bit. Try to collect my thoughts a little bit more on that. Let some more time pass by. Hunter Green's an unbelievable pitcher, right? But he's also not Justin Verlander, right? You look at his resume, and I don't see any Cy Youngs, right? I don't see any postseason wins, right? I don't know. Some of his comments rub me the wrong way a little bit. We'll just kind of leave it at that for now, but that's kind of going viral over on Twitter or whatever you get your social media. Hunter Green saying he felt a little bit disrespected by some of the dialogue around him this offseason. Defamation, right, is the phrase that he threw out, which is, I don't know, seemed pretty soft to me. But we won't fully dive into that here on today's show. But appreciate everyone, as always. Like the stream if you haven't done so already. Subscribe to the channel. On our way to 22,000 subscribers here at Chatterbox Sports. Got a lot of exciting stuff coming up the pipeline. So we want you to all be a part of it here at Chatterbox. Help us out. Subscribe. Like all of our streams. Like all of our videos, right? If you're watching and it's not a live stream and it's one of the clips that go out. By the way, I saw a little bit of confusion. You know, we know off the bench right now. I did see Reed Mouse this morning. It was good to see him. But for now, it's just me at 11 o'clock. So sometimes we'll premiere something. If we did a segment, you know, the previous day, we'll premiere it at 10 o'clock, right? Just so you can check it out. Something that would already go out as a YouTube video, but we'll premiere it the following morning. We might do that going forward a little bit. But anytime you see a video of ours, like it. Should be the first thing you do. We really appreciate it when you do that. Allows more people to put more eyeballs on our stuff, which allows us obviously to bring more content to you guys throughout the entirety of the year. But let's kind of dive in here to the Cincinnati Bengals. News broke yesterday. Jalen Davis is going to be back with the team. Definitely a positive thing, right? Is this like, oh, the Bengals are going to the Super Bowl now? No, right? But you saw the defense play a heck of a lot better when he got inserted into the lineup. Veteran player, right? Cincinnati have made the joke in the past that you turn 30 and we want nothing to do from you as far as the defensive perspective goes. Not the case here with Jalen Davis, just turned 30 years of age. He has spent 6 years here in Cincinnati and only has a handful of starts. Got him at the end of last year, but it's just been a model of consistency for this team, right? Your true grind it, get it out the dirt guy. Practice squad player for much of his career, is grinding it out in the preseason, trying to make the roster, always one of the final cuts. They sign him to the practice squad. They call him up from time to time. He was a part of the Super Bowl team, played a couple of snaps on special teams, and just continues to grind, be a good teammate, be a good voice in the room. And last year when the Bengals had some issues there at corner with CTB and just not being a reliable guy, and then he obviously got hurt, right? Fig Newton really was never able to take on that role. Marco Wilson dealt with some injuries there. DJ Ivey was kind of more of a third down specialist. They really needed somebody to step up and play good in the nickel, play good in the slot, play that Mike Hilton position, as Dax Hill and DJ obviously were balling on the outside. And ever since they inserted Jalen Davis into the lineup, that was kind of a key where some things clicked for Cincinnati. And we talked about how bad the defense was. I think it's very important to look big picture. When you look big picture of the Cincinnati Bengals defense last year, it was awful, right? That is fair to say. But I also can say that the final stretch of the year, they were solid. Bengals played their best defense at the end of the season, which is funny because they kind of did that in 24 as well. Did they face the most elite quarterbacks towards the end of the year? Absolutely not. Right, so take it with a grain of salt, but they allowed fewer than 18 points per game in the final 7 weeks. And that's when Jalen Davis really was inserted in the lineup and was being asked to be that nickel, play that Mike Hilton position. And clearly he's one of Zach's favorites. Zach has spoken glowingly of Jalen Davis for a long time, compared him a little bit to Mike Hilton. And those guys were working together in the same room for quite some time, and maybe they were able to learn off each other a little bit, but I definitely see some Mike Hilton in Jalen Davis when he's out there competing. And, you know, if the season were to start tomorrow, he's your starting nickel. Now, do you feel great about that? don't necessarily feel great about it, but I feel good about it, right? If you address other parts of your defense and you say your 3 corners, your 3 DBs besides the safeties or Dax, DJ, and Jalen Davis, yeah, sign me up for it. Now, does that mean you don't go get a guy in free agency if you can, add a depth piece, draft a guy? Absolutely not, right? This is a short-term thing. He's not the future, right? 30 years of age, has been a practice squad guy. There's a reason why he's been a practice squad guy, right? He's not a superstar, but he really did a nice job throughout the end of the year when it came to tackling. He tackled really well. He covered really well. Didn't give up any touchdowns in coverage. Had the interception against Miami, which was obviously a really cool moment for him. So that was really incredible, and I was really happy to get this news yesterday. And you take care of it before free agency, right? And I think there would have been a bit of a market for Jalen Davis if he said, you know what, I want to explore free agency here, because he had put some stuff on tape there at the end of the year, and he also can point to the fact, like, hey, this defense was unwatchable for much of the year. And then once I started starting, we weren't great, but we got a heck of a lot better. And I definitely think he deserves a lot of credit for it. Chuck Burks is fired up. Cornerback DB's coach for the Bengals calls him the most consistent player I've ever coached. So that's saying something there. Again, this is a practice squad guy, a guy that's been, I don't want to say journeyman because he's really been here for such a long time, but 30 years of age, hasn't played a ton of meaningful snaps in the NFL, and Chuck Burks is calling him the most consistent player he's ever coached, and he's just dependable. He's mature. You can rely on him to tackle, not make any boneheaded mistakes, not be an issue off the field, right? Like a Cam Taylor-Britt, because if you're making those kinds of mistakes off the field, you're not a 6-year practice squad guy, right? There's other guys that can step in that behave themselves a little bit better. Now, if you're an elite top-end talent, teams are willing to work with you a little bit more if you're out misbehaving. Not if you're in a Jalen Davis's role. So clearly he's a buttoned-up guy, a buttoned-up player, and the Bengals have a lot of love and respect and appreciation for what he's been able to do over the course of the past 6 years. And now they're going to reward him with a contract. Take care of it before free agency, which we should be celebrating, right? They should do this with Dalton Risner as well. You wait till free agency. You can still get guys and re-sign guys, but you get into these bidding wars, and the number just goes up. There isn't a situation in pro football when you have a player hit free agency and you get him at a lower number than what you could have gotten before free agency when you still had the ability to offer a contract, right? These teams, right, these free agent players, the teams in which they're playing for right now or most previously played for, they have an opportunity to get out ahead of it, right? There's nothing stopping the Bengals from giving Dalton Risner a contract right now. They could do it. There's nothing stopping the Chiefs from giving Travis Kelce one right now if he decides he wants to come back and play football next offseason. So I think, the way this offseason has gone, I've been talking about it a lot when it comes with, all the disarray in the division, right? New coaches coming in. Pretty fair to say downgrades, right, from the legends that were in place, and John Harbaugh and Mike Tomlin. Kevin Stefanski, right? The Athletic did a poll basically talking to scouts, executives, and coaches around the league, and they ranked like the best hires in this head coaching cycle, and Stefanski was 2 behind Harbaugh. So pretty clear that he was kind of a scapegoat-ish figure there in Cleveland. Really good coach, won Coach of the Year twice, right? And, Todd Monken was kind of the best Cleveland could do in that spot, but are we going to sit here and say he's an upgrade? No, right? Jesse Minter might turn into a superstar. Everybody wants to crown him as a superstar. I'm not ready to do that, right? Is he John Harbaugh? Absolutely not, right? Mike Tomlin, Mike McCarthy, that's kind of similar, but I think if you're the Bengals, you'd like to see some fresh blood in there, as Tomlin obviously had a lot of success against you. So you talk about the coaches in the division, right? You talk about some of the comments. You don't have a ton of controversy, right, around this team, right? T and Jamar are paid. They're happy. Joe's paid. I don't know if he's happy, but he's paid, right? Hendrickson, he's not. I think we all know it's going to kind of end. It's just a matter of if you can get a pick in 26 or 27 from him. So not a ton of turmoil there. And then you get this done with JD, get it done ahead of time, save some money, add a position of need. So, if we're in a spot where week 1 rolls around and those are your 3 corners, we're not going to complain about it. Is it the best thing in the world? No, but he's a reliable guy. He proved it. You're not paying him a ton of money. You're not committing to him for 5 years, right? And this is great. And I think Cincinnati should have made this move. They made this move. And it also tells me a little bit that they've got some questions with Fig Newton, right? Big year for Josh Newton coming into year 3 here in 2026. He had an opportunity to get some more snaps. Clearly, he's made of the right stuff, and the coaches talk about him in a good way, and Zach certainly talks about him in a good way. But they went with a guy that was on the practice squad over him there down the stretch, and it worked because he was playing really good football for the Cincinnati Bengals. So JD's back. Doesn't mean you don't add a corner in the draft or free agency, but I think it's a good thing for the Cincinnati Bengals. Leadership perspective, been there, done that, a part of that Super Bowl team, right? So you still have a little bit of that energy. Good tackler, good leader, dependable, cheap. And the contract hasn't been announced yet. Jeff Hobson was saying he thinks it's going to be announced on Friday, but Jalen Davis took to his Instagram last night or yesterday afternoon, I believe, and kind of broke the news that he's going to be back, and I certainly think that is positive for the Bengals. Also, BengalsTalk.com, they put together 3 guys for the Cincinnati Bengals that are facing make-or-break seasons. And I wanted to discuss these three players on today's show because I thought they were interesting. And the biggest reason I thought they were interesting is the first guy they listed was Joseph Osai. Right? Joseph Osai obviously is not under contract with the Cincinnati Bengals. He is a free agent. And the writer that penned this piece, he said that the Bengals might look at where free agency is at the edge rusher position, understand the need in which they have at that position, and say, you know what, we're just going to roll it back with a guy that we have here because nobody's really jumping out at us as a guy that we want to add to our roster. I think that would be a terrible, terrible mistake for the Cincinnati Bengals. I didn't think they should give him the one-year prove-it deal anyway going into last year. Right? They did it, and did it blow up in their face? No, right? And we talk about this with one-year contracts all the time. If you're paying somebody a one-year contract, it's not really going to blow up in your face. You can get out of it. Now, maybe you overpay for a guy, right? But it's not really going to be a complete disaster. So, one-year deal, whatever. Was he fine? Yeah, but if you add a fine player to a bad defense, it's going to be bad, right? He's clearly not good enough. I like the effort from him, but he doesn't translate the pressures into sacks enough. Had some good moments, right? And I think he's going to garner a sizable deal. I don't think he's going to be back on a prove-it contract. I would be surprised if he was, because somebody's going to look at his age, look at his athleticism, look at some of the stats that he was able to stack for this team last year and say, you know what, we want to roll the dice on this guy, give him a 3-year deal and pay him, a large chunk of change. Cincinnati definitely cannot do that. Absolutely cannot do that. If they want to, could they do another one-year deal? I'm not really interested in that, but I guess they could. But something tells me some other team out there is going to give him a heck of a lot more than that. So I thought that was interesting. The first guy that they put as far as a make or break is Joseph Osai. Well, let's call it a break because he's not going to be with this team, or he shouldn't be with this team next year. Second guy they listed was TJ Slayton. I think we all understand that this is a guy that has a big year coming for the Cincinnati Bengals. And it'll be interesting if one of those guys get cut, one of those interior defensive tackles, TJ Slayton or BJ Hill. I talked about how I probably would cut BJ Hill. You save more money against the cap if you cut Slayton, but Slayton's younger, came on there at the end, and I think he had a little bit more versatility, could still play a little bit on third down, was able to get just barely some interior pass rush, was supposed to be this big-time run stopper, which teams were running all over Cincinnati at the beginning part of the year, but once there was more stability around him, corners were playing better. I don't know if I can say the linebackers were playing better, but the defensive line was playing better. The guys around him were playing better, and then I think he played better towards the end. You had that marriage with Jerry Montgomery, obviously, from Green Bay, and just the age to me really is the main reason. So then he would be going into a contract season this year for Cincinnati if you don't cut him, right, because he signed the 2-year deal last offseason in free agency, and that would be a huge year for him. These defensive tackles, man, these Geno Atkins of the world, they're not just walking through the door, right? You don't pick them up on the side of the street and say, hey, come play interior defensive line in the National Football League, right? The Bengals have had a few good ones in the past. They've let them go. Geno Atkins, of course, retires, moves on from the game. DJ Reader, you let walk. He said you wanted Sheldon Rankins over DJ Reader. That absolutely blew up in your face. So that's a position that Cincinnati is going to have to be very detail-oriented with, and they're going to have to overpay there in free agency, in my opinion. By the way, The Athletic put out their top 150 free agents. We'll probably break that down either on Thursday or Friday of this week. Not the whole list, obviously, but just some names to keep an eye on for the Cincinnati Bengals, because I would like to get at least 3, 4, 5 of those players on this team next year for Cincinnati. Got all the cap space in the world in order to make it happen. But, I do think that position is going to be fascinating, and I don't think you can cut both. And at the same time, if you bring both back, I don't know if he can do that either. So TJ Slaton, it's going to be a big year for him. Is he going to make some crazy jump? I don't know. But you just need him to be more of a model of consistency for you, where it's like, okay, this guy can step up and get a stop for us on 3rd and 4th or short, right? This guy can get a couple of hits on the quarterback, provide some semblance of an interior pass rush, and it's going to be a huge year for TJ Slaton. But would it surprise anybody if this was his last year with Cincinnati, assuming it's kind of a similar year to how he had this past year, where it's like, okay, he's a playable player, but is he necessarily a part of the future? I don't know, but, surprising things happen. Look at Miles Murphy. Look at DJ Turner. None of us saw that coming, so maybe we'll get that a little bit from TJ Slaton. And he's still at the age, less than 30 years old, where something like that could actually happen. And the last guy is Dax Hill. Playing under the 5th-year option right now is where he's at with the Cincinnati Bengals. I've been very clear. I would extend him, right? Why? Because that cap hit, this 5th-year option cap hit, is huge. And it's boom, right here, right now. It's not massaged over a period of time. It is all at once. If you give him an extension, however, then it gets spread out over the course of a few years, which I think is positive. All right, you picked him in the 1st round. Is he first-round talent, just bona fide stud? No, but he's a guy that I think that's a solid pick. He didn't hit it out of the park, but it's a good pick. Guy that deserves another contract. A guy that can be a starter on a team that wins a Super Bowl, absolutely. And I would do that. I would give him that extension, because if you have him play under the 5th-year option, say he has a year similar to what he had this past year, well, then his number just goes way up, right? And then he might be sitting there like, you know what, I'm ready to hit free agency and just get the most money I can, which, again, not a good business decision if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. Cost you so much money with T. Higgins, a little bit of money, too, with Jamar Chase as well. You have something in him, right? There's been more consistency with him than DJ Turner. I understand that when he was starting at safety, it was like, we had some issues there. They asked him to play the slot. That wasn't great. It took him a while to find a home there on the outside. But, he was on the road to having a great year in 24, and then he got hurt. Didn't know how he'd bounce back with a serious knee injury. Bounced back just fine. I would give him that extension, and then this doesn't become a make-or-break year for Dax Hill. But you're in a spot where if you don't give it to him, he balls out again. Well, now you're stuck, because you got to give him a ton of money, a lot more than you would have to give him right now. So, be ahead of the times, play a little chestnut checkers here, roll the dice. You've seen enough from him. He's made of the right stuff. That's always should be kind of a difference maker, right? He's not Cam Taylor-Britt. Seems to be a mature guy, doesn't get in trouble, seems to be a good leader on the defense, more of a lead by action than a vocal leader type guy. But I think he can be a part of the solution going forward, and I would give him that extension this offseason if I'm the Cincinnati Bengals. All right, Patrick Mahomes. I want to talk about this a little bit on today's show. The Chiefs, again, it has been reported, ESPN yesterday, I think it was Over the Cap actually, that reported this initially. Patrick Mahomes is going to restructure his contract once again. Converts $54.45 million of Mahomes' 26 salary into a signing bonus and lowers the quarterback's cap number to $34.65 million. So clears up about $20 million there against the cap. That's what a contract restructure, by the way, would do for Joe Burrow. 4th consecutive year, Kansas City has restructured Mahomes' contract. The Chiefs entered the offseason more than $57 million over the cap and will still need to make some financial maneuvers after reworking Mahomes' deal. This is what the winning teams do. This is what the well-run organizations do. Take advantage of the fact that the salary cap is going to go up each and every year and make a restructure. Push some of that money deeper into the future, right? Doesn't affect the amount of money Mahomes is getting. Wouldn't affect the amount of money Joe Burrow is getting. It allows you to create a little bit more space and thus be more aggressive in free agency and bring in some pieces and pay them some money and have them be a part of the solution going forward and make you a serious Super Bowl contender. The Chiefs, I didn't realize they were that high over the cap, so not quite the Dallas Cowboys, but they're going to have to cut some guys. There's going to be some guys that they can't give contracts, right? Brian Cook, the safety that we were talking about earlier in the week, Cincinnati UC guy, right? They can't afford to bring him back, right? What do you do with Travis Kelce? Can you get him back? Leo Shenault, the linebacker, what do you do with him? Do you have to cut Chris Jones? So they got a lot of questions that they need to answer as it relates to the cap. Now, the Bengals are so conservative that we're sitting here and they got $50 million-ish to spend this offseason against the cap. So knowing the Cincinnati Bengals, they'll say, oh, that's great. That's plenty. That's enough. We'll go on and do what we can and go from there. That shouldn't be the mindset. The mindset should be, well, we could have about $70 million to spend. Let's open up some more space, right, and go get that elite player. We talk about these top-of-the-line free agents, right, the Jalen Phillips of the world, the Odafe Owehs of the world, right, where we look at it and go, yeah, the Bengals need an edge rusher, but they're not going to be aggressive on a guy like that. They're not going to take a big-time swing. They could, right? They could if they opened up some more money, worked out of character a little bit. The reason why I don't want to use the word optimistic because I'm not optimistic, but the reason why I don't believe I'm just blowing smoke here and think this is an actual possibility is because the Bengals have adjusted to the norm, to status quo in the past for Joe Burrow, right? As far as giving him the huge contract to begin with, right? Basically listening to his demands/asks with T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Mike Gesicki, and others, right? Giving those two guys that money. And, did they get it done as efficiently as they could have and should have with Jamar and T? No. But I think a lot of us were still surprised that they got it done when they did, right? They got it done, early in the offseason, right, when Jordan Schultz broke that. And they got both broke at the same time as they kind of did both those contracts hand in hand, right? It wouldn't have surprised any of us if that thing drug into training camp and it was some big stink this offseason or last offseason, right? But that wasn't the case. So they've adjusted off of the norm before in the past. Would they do it again with the Joe Burrow restructure, especially after Burrow has come out and said, yeah, I'll do it, right? Convert it into a signing bonus, free up some more money, and go from there. So I don't think people say copycat league all the time, right? It's not a bad thing to take a page from one of these teams' playbooks, right? Kansas City, right? Oh, they've had some success. And remember when Mahomes signed that in 2020, it was like a 10-year, $450 million deal, something crazy. I think it broke the record for North American sports contracts, which has since been broken. But at the time, committing that long term, nobody really does that, right? You look at Joe and Josh Allen and Trevor Lawrence and these other huge deals. They're not 10-year deals like Mahomes was. So could that cost Kansas City going forward? Maybe. But they're like, yeah, we'll deal with it then. We'll deal with it then. We'll keep restructuring. There's no limit to they got to stop. No, they've done it 4 years in a row, and they're going to continue to do it, right? As the cap continues to go up, and they're going to continue to get flexible with how they pay Patrick Mahomes and how they can still put a roster around him. At some point, he hasn't done it yet, not to my knowledge, but you talk about Tom Brady taking pay cuts. I think at some point Mahomes will probably do that. Is that something that Burrow would explore in the future? I wouldn't expect him to do that on this contract, right? But if he wants to win, well, he can't be taking as big of a part of the pie as he is right now, right? Right now, I'd take all the money he can if you're Joe Burrow. But if he gets, in his low 30s and he still doesn't have that ring and he still wants to be here in Cincinnati, maybe you talk about taking a pay cut. But for now, that's not what we're asking. Just a little restructure job from the Cincinnati Bengals. Great teams do it. The Chiefs have done it again with Patrick Mahomes. Absolutely no reason you shouldn't entertain that if you're the Cincinnati Bengals. All right, Miami RedHawks. They pick up another big-time victory. Beat UMass 86-77, improved to 26-0 on the season, and they're just so fun to watch. I'm watching the game last night, and how would they look against Duke or Arizona? I don't know, right? We don't need to have that conversation right now. But I do know that they know how to play winning basketball. The way they move the ball, the way they share the basketball, they're unselfish. They're unflappable. They go into these environments, right? I mean, you're playing UMass. You're thinking, going to UMass. Who really cares? Well, you're forgetting that the Miami RedHawks are undefeated, right? I mean, that was a raucous environment there, whatever that venue is called. Those kids, that fan base, they showed up. They were loud, and they were within striking distance, they being UMass, throughout the entirety of the game. As I mentioned earlier, Miami was leading for all but 47 seconds, but this was not a easy victory by any stretch of the imagination, right? And Elmer, he didn't have his best game as far as scoring the basketball. He had a big three in the corner there in the final minutes. That was huge. But it was a lot of Peter Suter. It was a lot of Luke Skowjak, and Atlason off the bench had some really, really good minutes. The freshmen didn't play a ton. I think were around 10 minutes there, Kirby and Trey Perry. But some guys stepped up. Atlason stepped up, and Byers, they didn't get a ton of scoring from him. So just the two guards, Suter, what he can do is unbelievable, right? And, he can shoot it. He can shoot it from the perimeter. He can get to the rim. He can defend too. Like he's not a cone out there. Like I'm not gonna say he's Tony Allen or get carried away here, but he can go out there and defend against these guards in this league. We'll see how it looks against elite competition in the tournament. Obviously, fingers crossed that they're able to do that. But they just shoot the ball well. They don't cave in these huge moments, right? There's been so many different times this year where it feels like it's slipping away, right? Where it's like, you know what, the run's over, right? The shots aren't falling. Made a couple of mistakes late. It's going to cost them. They just don't blink. They don't blink. They continue to respond, continue to get back up, keep fighting. I think it speaks to the resilience of their head coach, Travis Steele. That dude's got some serious confidence right now, and he's walking around with some serious swagger, and I don't blame him one bit for it. This is a vision that they've had, right? He was speaking with a lot of confidence early in the year. He knew what this group was capable of. It was just a matter of putting it out on the basketball floor and playing winning basketball, and that's what they've been able to do, and it's been absolutely unbelievable to watch. Ended the game hitting 7 of their last 8 shots, right? If you didn't watch the game, you look at the scoreboard and say, you know what, 10-point victory or 9-point victory, you think it was kind of easy work for them? No, right? They had to fight tooth and nail to the very end and get a huge victory, and they were able to do that, and they deserve a heck of a lot of credit for it. And, on paper, that was the final big test for them. They still have 5 games left in the league, but, you would think that they're able to keep this thing going, right? And they don't have they got a home game coming up, another nationally televised game, a couple more on the road, but they'll be heavy favorites the rest of the way. And I think the reason why they should be a team that can make the tournament even if they stub their toe is how they have played on a consistent basis throughout the whole year, right? They have won in different ways. They've been an underdog multiple times this year, and they've obviously won outright as an underdog. The games in which they are favored, and look, the committee, they're not going to take a look at covering the spread, right? But they call them the RedHawks too, right? They're covering spreads when they're favorites, right? They're not messing around with teams that they should be messing around with, right? They cover the spread more times than they don't, and I think that, speaks to, the complete season that they put together. Is it great that they have a couple of non-D1 games on their schedule? No, right? But Travis Steele and the RedHawks, they're not coming out there acting like they're playing in the SEC. They're doing the best with what is in front of them. They're handling business. They're covering spreads. They're winning as underdogs. They're winning at home. They're winning on the road. They're coming from behind. They're getting out to good starts and winning games like that. So they've really put a complete product on the basketball floor through 26 games. And I'm not sitting here saying they should be ranked 7 in the country. I'm not. I think the ranking is probably fair. Would it be cool to get inside the top 20? Obviously. But I'm not banging the table saying they're getting disrespected not being in the top 20. However, everything that I just mentioned, the consistency, multiple ways that they have won, beating teams that they should beat, winning as underdogs as well, that should allow them to be able to stub their toe and lose a game, whether it be one of these final 5 or lose a game in the tournament and still be able to get in. Because it's very clear. Are they going to be favored against a really good team, a Power 4 team, right? No. We understand that. But the way they play, when the shots are falling and they're moving the ball and they're defending and they're believing in each other and they're playing a complete 40 minutes on the basketball floor, they're capable of beating a lot of teams. I'm not going to go as far as to say they're capable of beating anybody in the country yet, right? But they're capable of beating some really good teams. They're capable of winning a couple of games in the tournament. Like, if you told me this team was in the Sweet 16, I wouldn't fall out of my chair. I wouldn't laugh at you. I would say, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So we'll continue to watch. We'll continue to root them on. Hopefully we can get Travis Steele on the show. Again, coming up here, shout out to him for coming on early in the year. But, yeah, I would love to have another conversation with him about, well, you were 4-0 when we had you on the last time. And now, obviously, you're in a spot where hopefully they're 30-0, right, and getting ready for the MAC tournament. But pretty unbelievable story. And they're getting disrespected a little bit, but they're playing with that chip on their shoulder. They love it, right? It's not phasing those guys at all. And it blows me away how complete of a team that they are. And you might have your questions on whether or not they can go on some run or beat these top-end teams, but they are a legitimate basketball team, right? And you talk about the teams in this city. Like, you watch them play versus watch UC play. UC looks like they got no clue what they're doing, right? Even Xavier, right? Xavier loses another close game last night, by the way. At some point, that thing's going to switch in their favor, whether it be next year or whatever. But they're going to win some of these close games, and their record could look totally different. But the way that they defend, the way that they move the ball, the way that they shoot, defend without fouling, don't make mistakes, face adversity, stare it right in the face, punch it right in the face, get back up. I mean, they are a complete basketball team. And pretty awesome that it's happening down the road here in Oxford, Ohio. And got another national televised game coming up, which certainly is very exciting. Want to talk a little golf here on the show as well. Liv, I'm not going to sit here and act like I follow Liv. I don't follow Liv whatsoever. I've had some strong opinions on Liv. I think you're seeing it come back around as far as at some point here in a few years, there isn't going to be a Liv. Koepka already back. Patrick Reed coming back. I think DeChambeau, it's only a matter of time. He might do another year or two, but he'll be coming back. And of course, John Rahm will come back. And eventually, all will be right in the world. And it's kind of heading in that direction. It was a big stink there for a while about these players leaving to go to Liv, and the Saudis put hundreds of millions of dollars into it, and a lot of these guys are like, you're going to pay me $100 million to work less? Sure, I'll do it. And it's impossible for me to say what I would do, because it's easy for me to be like, oh, I wouldn't do that, right? I want to play real golf where, legacy matters and play on the PGA Tour, but if someone threw you $100 million, like, are you going to be able to still say that? I don't know. So credit to guys like Scotty Scheffler and Rory McIlroy and Jordan Spieth and Justin Thomas, who got thrown a ton of money and said, you know what, I'm good. Side notes, really quickly, as we talk a little bit about Tiger, I do wonder, as Tiger, of course, has had an insane life, success on the course, issues off the course. Remember, he got in that car wreck a couple of years ago, and completely messed up his leg. Right, I mean, he still doesn't wear shorts and show that leg, and when he does, he's got a sleeve on it, so that leg is completely mangled. And for a while there, I think a lot of people were worried that he may have lost his life in that car accident. And you thank the Lord, obviously, that he is all right and that he's just fine and that he's going to try to play golf again competitively. He didn't rule out the Masters. He's going to play on the Champions Tour at some point, but you wonder if that would have gone south and he would have lost his life in that accident. Would there still be, a PGA Tour? I mean, there would still be one, but would Scotty have still stayed? Would Rory have still stayed? Spieth, Thomas? Because the reason those guys stayed is very simple. They stayed because of Tiger Woods, right? Does that still happen if he wasn't here anymore? I don't know. That's kind of an interesting conversation there. But Tiger's done a tremendous job as far as, how he conducts himself in these press conferences. You talk about Nick Saban being like a commissioner for college football, right? And I think he would do a tremendous job of that. Golf, of course, has a commissioner, but they need to get Tiger in some leadership role where he's out speaking into a microphone often, right, and having these press conferences, because clearly he's addicted to the game of golf. He absolutely loves it. He cares about it with every fiber of his being. And if I'm the PGA Tour, I want to tap into that, because you see, right, if he plays in the Masters, which I'm not going to sit here and say he's going to, but guy's 50 years old, doesn't really have a chance to win, as fun as it is to say that, he might get it done, and all the cameras are going to be on him, right? Yeah, they're going to go to Scotty and Rory, but they're going to see what Tiger Woods is doing, even if he's shooting 78, 79, right? That's just the superstar that he is, and it's been pretty unbelievable, to watch that. I, got it towards growing up in my childhood, certainly, and then that 19 Masters, that'll just, live with us forever, because that performance was just absolutely insane. It felt like you were watching a movie, because you hear all these crazy things, and you see these highlights about Tiger, and then you see him doing it in person again, and you're like, oh my goodness, this is absolutely insane. But back to the live stuff. At some point they're going to be cooked, and we'll all laugh at them when that happens. But you got to give Anthony Kim a lot of credit. And speaking of Tiger, Anthony Kim was this young hotshot guy that was, I'm not going to say he was giving Tiger trouble, but he was competing with him a little bit, and he was just some young kid, had a lot of spunk, had a lot of energy. And he just disappeared off the face of the earth and had some serious drug and alcohol problems. And, Liv gave him a chance. He came back last year, and he was shooting like 80, which you and me, we shoot 80, and we're like, all right, there we go. When these guys go shoot 80, it's like the most embarrassing thing in the world, right? And he was playing in these tournaments and just not competing whatsoever. And what he was able to do last weekend, I think they were in Australia, which, again, I don't follow Live. I don't care about Live. And I think this is like their big tournaments. That's another thing, talking about legacy. Like, if like Brooks Koepka won all those tournaments on Live, okay, like who cares, you know? And like Rahm, I don't think has one, and he's had a bunch of runner-up finishes. Like, okay, like it just doesn't mean anything at all if you win these tournaments. However, for a guy like Anthony Kim, and I think perspective here is key, understanding where he had come from, all the issues in which he had. I mean, there are stories about him that came out. I don't know if they're true, but people talk about him like they're true, about him, you know, in between holes at Augusta National, like going to the bathroom and doing drugs. Like, it's crazy, crazy stuff. And he's been able to piece his life back together. He's married now, has a kid, right, and is committed to playing good golf. And to be in the final group with Jon Rahm and Bryson DeChambeau, who I was just sitting there making fun of Live, but those are two of the best players in the world, right? And I think you could argue those are two of the top 5 or 6 players in the world, if I'm being completely honest. And he didn't just beat him. He beat the living crap out of him that final day at Live to win the golf tournament. He shot 9 under. DeChambeau shot like 2 over. Jon Rahm shot a couple of under. But he didn't just squeak by. He absolutely dominated them, and he was fist bumping all over the place, and you felt that energy there as well, which I love Scottie Scheffler. I think he's the best athlete in the world right now. I love watching it. I will sign up to watch Scottie Scheffler anytime, anywhere. You know, the lack of emotion that he shows doesn't bother me at all. But I get, for somebody that isn't a huge golf fan or doesn't appreciate his game and wants to be entertained a little bit more, I can see how that would be, quote unquote, a little bit boring, right? Well, you didn't get that from Anthony Kim, right? He's going around, going crazy, fist bumping. And I think the tour could use that a little bit. And also I think the tour could use, you know, some villains, right? You talk about it in the NFL all the time. It's kind of like a reality TV show, right? You got guys at press conferences taking shots at one another. You got guys out there running their mouth on the field. You used to see that in the heyday of the NBA. You don't really see it so much now, as it's so much more political and diplomatic, and guys don't want to get fined. And you got a lot of international players who literally just want to show up, play basketball, and go home, right? They don't want to do anything else. But having a character like that, I think, would be very positive. On the PGA Tour, could he potentially come back? Anthony Kim, of course, who I'm talking about, maybe. Is this kind of a one-off? Can he be consistent? I don't know, right? But bringing Patrick Reed back, I'm not a Patrick Reed guy, but he's kind of a controversial figure, right? That's good for television. That's good for getting people's interest up a little bit, especially when your face of your tour is kind of just a chilled-out guy, obviously, in Scottie Scheffler. But what Anthony Kim was able to accomplish was really, really incredible. And the turnaround in which he had, obviously don't condone all the stuff he was doing before, but it seems like he's picked himself back up. And, you know, this was a guy that was kind of a rocket ship early on in his career when he was in his 20s and he was firing at all cylinders and making runs at Tiger. And then he fell off the face of the earth, and now here he is in his 30s, you know, winning a golf tournament that nobody cares about. But for context, beating Jon Rahm and beating Bryson DeChambeau, pretty unbelievable that he was able to pull that off. Now on the real tour, PGA Tour, I think it's been an unbelievable start to the year, really. And they didn't have the first event at Kapalua, as there were some issues there with the weather. I think maybe some drought issues and some flooding issues. That course is kind of undergoing some changes right now, so there was no Century Tournament of Champions. I actually had a buddy that was supposed to go out there and play it on his honeymoon and wasn't able to do it because the course is not functional right now. This was a couple of months ago. But season got kicked off at the other tournament in Hawaii, the Sony Open, and Chris Gotterup goes out there and he wins. This dude's the real deal. I actually saw him when he was at Rutgers, watched him live at Scarlet, Ohio State's home course in Columbus. Didn't really think anything of it. Yeah, I saw him hit some cool golf shots, but I didn't think this guy would be a rock star on the PGA Tour. And here he is, and he's absolutely getting it done. And I was banging the table during the Ryder Cup that he should have been a pick, right? Because he was hot, and he had the moxie, and he had the swagger, and he had the confidence, and that was something Team USA could have used. And Keegan Bradley obviously opted to go in a different direction. That was a huge mistake from Captain Keegan Bradley. By the way, should have played, should have been a captain's, or should have been a playing captain in the Ryder Cup. Does it make a difference? I don't know. Europe has our number for whatever reason. That's got to get addressed in the coming years, but seems like he's kind of a lock for the President's Cup here this year. Talking about Chris Gotterup. Has won twice. Won the Saudi Open, and, winning on the PGA Tour is huge. Won the Scottish Open last year as well, and then he follows it up by winning again. He's won twice this year. Won the Waste Management as well. Played great on the weekend. Did he get, a little bit, I don't want to use the word lucky, but caught a break there with Hideki Matsuyama, who just completely melted, couldn't hit the driver all day. Short game kind of held him in check a little bit there on Sunday, and then just kind of melted away, got in the playoff, Gotterup was able to win. So two-time winner already this year. Guy's a stud. Guy's going to be a Ryder Cupper for several years. I love everything about his game. Hits it 400 million yards. Has a low ball flight, works it left to right, kind of a old school, just overpowered type guy, which might have some success this week at Riv. But seems like just a guy's guy, right? He's a younger dude. He doesn't look like Michael Phelps out there, right? Like he's got a bit of a belly, just kind of seems like relatable, seems like a guy to hang out with, watch a ball game, have a beer with, and he's going to be a problem here for a long time. Chris Gotterup off to a heck of a start this year. And then Scottie Scheffler, of course, has already won the Amex this year. You talk about the comparisons between him and Tiger Woods. As I mentioned earlier in the show, at first I was hesitant because, you're not just talking about some guy when you're talking about Tiger Woods. A lot of people would call him the best ever. You can have the debate about him or Jack Nicklaus. Maybe we'll do that some other time. But Scottie Scheffler clearly is the real deal. And if you don't watch golf, I would encourage you to tap in when he's playing and to watch him because it's absolutely unbelievable. Everything about him. Guy's not even 30 years old yet, and he's made hundreds of millions of dollars just on the golf course. Doesn't even count his endorsements. Won the Waste Management in 22 and has just been a rocket ship ever since that. 20-plus PGA Tour wins. If you could bet on him to win, he already won once, but if it's 4.5 wins for him this year, I'm taking the over. Right, and I'm probably throwing another major championship in there as well, and dominant performance from him. But I think the reason why I'm talking about the Amex there, but I think the reason why I think you see some Tiger similarities with his game is one, the focus that he has, but it's also the competitive nature that he has there as well. I think a lot of guys, if you don't play great the first 2 weekends of a tournament, you could be tempted to just, let's coast this thing a little bit. Let's not really try to grind on the range and on the putting green after the round. And, it's just, we made the cut, but a little top 40, top 50 finish for us this week, and then we'll kind of move on to the next thing. That's not Scottie Scheffler at all. And he went absolutely berserk on the weekend at Pebble. And he goes into Sunday, down 8? And didn't really, if he's anybody else, you're like, he doesn't have a chance to win, but it's like he's Scottie Scheffler, so, we'll see. And shoots 62 or 63, multiple eagles on the front 9, and he was playing. Part of what makes Scottie so good is he's so disciplined and knows when to fire at pins and when not, but he was firing at everything, and he was making a ton of putts. All the putts were going in, and he was at one point on the back 9 tied for the lead. Now, Pebble was so gettable there on that Sunday. The guys behind him just had an advantage to go a little bit lower. But just to get back in the tournament, right, when it seemed like, there's no way that Scottie can, get back in contention or have another top 10 finish, he was able to do it. And it's just unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable what we're watching with him. And he goes into all these tournaments. I don't know if you're familiar with golf betting, but a lot of times he's like plus 275 to win or plus 250 or plus 300. That's absurd to win a golf tournament, right? You know how many guys are in the field and how much has to go your way in order to win a golf tournament, and routinely he comes in plus 250, plus 300 to win. And what's crazy about it is it's always a great bet, right? Now, if you're betting on golf, you want it to be a longer odds type of situation. So if your guy wins, you make a bunch of money, right? So I get the hesitancy on taking Scottie Scheffler to win, but guess what? You're watching late on Sunday, you always got a chance with Scottie Scheffler. Seemingly each and every week, you always have a chance that he is going to win, and it's unbelievable to watch. And he might not have the biggest personality in the world, right? But I love everything about him, right? Family guy, married, has a kid. I think he's got another kid on the way, and clearly is not fazed at all by money. Clearly is not fazed at all about fame. He just wants to go out there and golf and kick people's butts, right? And that's what he does. And he's got that mentality to him. Like, you talk to him after the round, these reporters talk to him after the round, and he's this, jolly guy talking about his family, thanking the good Lord, all that good stuff. When he's out on the golf course, he wants to kill you, right? And Tiger obviously had that quality there as well. So, unbelievable performance from him at Pebble to come back the way he did, shoot 63, 62, whatever it was in the final round. Pretty unbelievable. Morikawa wins the tournament, though, and that was good for him. I was talking about Goddard, how he should have been on the Ryder Cup team last year. He absolutely should have, and it should have been over Colin Morikawa. Morikawa's kind of been sputtering a little bit. Very talented guy. A couple of majors early on in his career, but hadn't won in like 2 years-ish since obviously he won on Sunday at Pebble. And good for him. I think, for American golf, they need Colin Morikawa to be a really good player. He was struggling to even get top 5, top 10 finishes as well. So we'll see if he can, kind of build off this. He's a guy that you want to be on the Ryder Cup team and play well. He's been on several of these teams and hasn't played well and shouldn't have been on the team last year. That was a bad pick from Keegan Bradley. But he picks up a win, announces he's having a kid after, so pretty cool moment for Colin Morikawa there. And we'll see. So a lot of studs are already winning this year on the tour, which I think is great. You don't have these no-name guys winning. Goddard, future superstar. Scheffler, the best player on the planet. He won. Morikawa, a guy that's multiple-time major champion who had been struggling a little bit, but everybody views him when he's at his best, one of the best players in the world. Also, Justin Rose, right, winning at Torrey Pines, who I absolutely love Justin Rose. He talked about, that guy just grinds, right? Major champion. Won the U.S. Open a long time ago, was right there at the Masters, played great early in the week, kind of got back into the tournament on Sunday last year, gets into the playoff with Rory, and I was rooting for Justin Rose pretty hard there to get it done. He was not able to do it, but he's a guy that you think is going to play solid golf for several more years, right, and be a factor in all these majors. Wouldn't surprise me at all. I remember you had Phil a couple of years ago win a major as an old guy, right? I think Justin Rose certainly could be that guy, but an incredible week for him at Torrey. He's caused the Americans so many issues in these world events, these Ryder Cups, these President's Cups. Feels like at some point he's going to be a captain, and he probably will be a playing captain as well. But Justin Rose, unbelievable guy. Grinder's been doing it for a long time, and he has a win this year already as well. So Riv this week is going to be tremendous. Great venue. Tiger spoke earlier in the week. Everybody's all fired up for that. Just the field is insane. Signature event, right? So the purse is like $20 million. Lots of value on Scotty. Rory played well, by the way, at Pebble. Rory's an interesting cat. Clearly, when he's at his best, he's the second best player in the world, right? It's a little bit different because, like Scotty, you're surprised when he makes a bogey, right? And he almost never makes worse than a bogey. Whereas Rory will have some stretches where he makes a bunch of bogeys. He had like a double and a triple at Pebble as well, and then still turned around and shot like 70 or 71, and then finished it up with like a 63, 64 the final day. So Rory can ride the wave. When he gets hot, there isn't much that can slow him down. I would expect Rory to play well this week. Long course, right? Rory's going to try to overpower it. I think he's like minus 110, top 10 finish. I think there's a lot of value in that. I expect Rory to play well. I expect Scotty to play well again. Jordan Spieth was able to put some stuff together at Pebble. I don't know if this course, Riv, really works in his favor, but should be an incredible week of golf. And all the stars are playing and signature events. And it's been a great start to the year for golf. And you even get the cool story with Anthony Kim there on the LIV Tour, which is pretty unbelievable there as well. Lastly, before we get out of here, I want to talk Chase Burns for a second. It's fascinating. We've kind of hit this a bunch of times, which, it's an important storyline, and it needs to continue to be discussed as far as who that final starter is going to be for the Reds in their rotation. Who's that fifth guy going to be behind Green, Lodolo, Abbott, and Singer? And my gut tells me Rhett Lauder, but then you hear the stuff coming out about Chase Burns, how locked in he is, and it wouldn't surprise you if it is Chase Burns. But Charlie Goldsmith wrote about this yesterday. One thing that apparently he's going to really try to tap into more this year is that energy. And that'll be interesting to see how that works. Because when you watch him at Wake Forest, of course, former number 2 overall pick in the MLB draft, he had a huge chip on his shoulder, and he was a crazy guy out there. And he would turn, he would hype up the crowd, he'd be screaming, he'd be yelling. And you didn't see that at all during his time with the Reds. And I appreciated that, but at the same time, you got to be who you are, right? If I was out there pitching, I wouldn't be some crazy guy. That's just not me. That's not my personality. But that's who Chase Burns is, right? And I think he should tap into that a little bit more. And he was telling Charlie that he plans to do that there as well. And Nick Martinez was trying to get that out of him last year. And, he had a different role going to the bullpen. But I think you're going to see a lot more emotion out of Chase Burns this year. And when you talk about how the staff is, right, and you've got some mellow guys on that staff. They're all studs, but you're not getting crazy reactions from Green, Lodolo, or Abbott, or Singer. So to have a bit of a wild card there as your fifth guy, I don't think is the end of the world. And I think he pitches his best when he's like that as well. And you saw that when he was at Wake Forest. Apparently he's really working on that third pitch. He was basically fastball slider, and that was it last year, which – there's plenty of guys that have a ton of success in the big leagues with two pitches, but if you want to be a complete pitcher and you're only 23 years old or however old he is, you need to add another one into your repertoire. And apparently he's been working really hard on the changeup. Tito's talked about how that's really become a nice, solid pitch for him. It's tough when you're such a young kid and you get caught up to the big leagues, to sit there and work on another pitch so I can set back your growth a little bit, right? Slow you down a little bit, whereas you just want to get in there, throw your two pitches, overpower guys, and go from there. But Derek Johnson, Tito sitting down saying, yeah, we got to develop you into more of a complete pitcher. Apparently he's been working on the curveball a little bit there as well, so that'll be fun to see once we get to see him on TV for the first time, either in spring or the regular season, obviously, throwing that, kind of the full repertoire pitches, not just being a two-pitch pitcher, but expect him to tap into his emotion a little bit more this year, be a little bit more fiery out there on the mound, and I think that could go a really long way for this Red staff because he might not be the fifth guy coming out, but he's going to be starting games for Cincinnati at some point. He's going to be on the big league roster for this team at some point there as well, and it's a great problem to have. Having a lot of pitchers and multiple guys that are capable of being your fifth starter, great problem to have. You ask any manager in baseball, would you like to have that problem that Tito has right now? And they all would say absolutely yes. Would rather have 6 or 7 guys that could be in the rotation as opposed to having 2 or 3. And then those last few spots, you're just holding on for dear life. So that'll be a fun story to continue to follow. And looking forward to a first full year of kind of the Chase Burns experience for the Cincinnati Redhawks. But that'll do it for this edition of the show. Appreciate everyone, as always, for tuning in. Talk more Bengals stuff tomorrow. Again, I was mentioning earlier in the show, the Athletic put out their 150 top free agents, and I think it's important to kind of pick out some names, and we'll go through them. We'll break them down. That'll happen either tomorrow or Friday. Not going to do all of them, obviously, but out of that list, and there's going to be some other guys that get signed. Obviously, it's just 150 players, and you might disagree with where the Athletic has them ranked. That's totally fine, but it's good to get familiar with that list, have an eye on who is on that list, and some potential fits for Cincinnati because they need several guys that are on that list to be a part of this team going forward. They all should really be on the defensive side. So we're going to break that down a little bit. I'm going to put that together, put some notes together on some of those guys, and we'll discuss that later in the week. We'll see if the Bengals make a tag and trade or if they franchise tag Trey Henderson. That window is open. They are able to do that right now. Combine coming up next week. My opinion, great time to tag Trey Henderson. You can wait a little bit, tag him right before the combine, tag him at the combine. Just put your feelers out. Talk to some of these other teams in Indianapolis. Try to figure out, okay, would you have interest in Trey Henderson? You going to sauce us a little third-round pick in 2026 for him? What are you thinking? Because talking about that list from The Athletic, guess who was number 1? Trey Henderson, and that shouldn't surprise many people. So that's what I'd be doing, right? And I'd be looking at Kansas City saying, oh, they just restructured Mahomes. Let's restructure Joe Burrow a little bit, get about $20 million more to work with, and sign some studs here in free agency. And you don't got necessarily Hall of Fame guys walking around, but you got guys that can contribute to your team at a high level, and they should be very active in free agency, and then obviously executing the draft there as well. But looking forward to all those conversations coming up. Miami RedHawks stay undefeated. Huge win against UMass last night. They are back in action, I believe, on Friday at Millett Hall. Bowling Green, is that right? Something like that. But appreciate everyone as always. Happy Ash Wednesday, and we will be back on the show tomorrow. Till then, take care, everybody.